Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rin. Like so many people, I am trying to diversify my reading a bit more. I find it so interesting to read more and more about different people and different places and different time periods as well. I think books can really capture the atmosphere of a certain place and a certain culture so well. And it's just wonderful to read about, wonderful to experience, to learn, to enrich your mind, to be more well read. And like so many people, I am trying to read a book from every country in the world. I've been going about this challenge very casually, just kind of as a book speaks to me, I will write down what country it's from and read it kind of as my mood sees fit. I haven't really done a lot of research into like what book should I read from a specific country. It's more just like what kind of recommendations get fed to me, which I like. I plan on kind of spreading this challenge out throughout many years. In any case, I want to give an update on the books from the countries that I have read so far. I'll just kind of update periodically as I have more books from different countries that I've read and so on. So I have my iPad here, which is where I just keep track of it all. I have broken it down by continent. So let's start with the Americas. The first book that I have is from Canada, and it's Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This is literally one of my favorite books of all time. I love this book. It's about an anxious lesbian who accidentally gets hired to be a receptionist at a Catholic church. Very modern, very funny, really a great portrayal of like being a young woman in this world. Highly recommend this book. For other Canadian books, I really want to read Anne of Green Gables. I can't believe I haven't read it yet. I love the TV show, but I really want to read that whole series. It's kind of high on like books I want to buy to read next. So that's a recommendation for like a classic kind of Canadian book. I'm from America, so most of the books that I read are American, but I will recommend one, which is Stoner by John Williams. I think this is a fantastic like American novel. It follows a man from Missouri as he enrolls in the University of Missouri at the start of the 1900s. My neighbor is like moving furniture around right now. He's born to a like poor farming family, and as he enrolls in the university, he becomes like enraptured by literature and stays on as a professor, and you just follow him through his life. This book is fantastic. The writing in it is just gorgeous, and the attention to detail in the storytelling is so beautiful. I really, really recommend this one. For Mexico, my recommendation is Stillborn by Guadalupe Nettle. This is translated from Spanish by Rosalind Harvey. This book follows two women. They've been friends for a long time and they've both vowed to not have children. However, in their like late 20s, early 30s, one of the women decides she does want to have children and has a child with born with disability. The other one is kind of steadfast in her child-free life, though she forms a relationship with her neighbor's son. Again, just a very modern book, I feel like, talking about being child-free, the choice to be child-free, being a mother, and kind of going through motherhood when it doesn't look like what you imagined it would be. For Argentina, I have Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. This is translated from the Spanish by Frances Riddle. I love this book. This is another one of my like all-time favorites. It follows an older woman named Elena. She has Parkinson's. Her daughter is found dead. The police and everybody around her tells her that it was a suicide, but Elena believes that it was a murder. And so you follow her traveling across the city to call in an old favor from somebody to help her find out the truth about her daughter. Because she has Parkinson's, she's very limited in what she can do and very bound to her medicine and taking them on time. They affect her ability to handle daily tasks. This is just an absolutely beautiful book, a really interesting perspective on mother-daughter relationships, especially later in life. So I highly recommend this one. And then for Chile, I have Bonsai by Alejandro Zambra. This is translated from Spanish by Megan McDowell. To be completely honest, I didn't love this one. This is a very experimental kind of fiction. I think that's what Zambra is known for. It follows two young students who study literature and kind of love literature together. That's all I really got from this book. It was just a little bit too plotless and loose for me. I might try another one of Zambra's. I think some of his other work are a little bit more grounded. For the Caribbean, I have only read 2. So from Granada, I read A Trace of Sun by Pan Williams. I honestly did not love this one either. It starts with a young boy is left behind while his mother and his father and his younger sibling move to England, and he's left at Granada to be raised by his aunts. 7 years later, they have him immigrate to the UK to live with them. And so it's kind of about their reconciliation, learning, him grappling with having been left behind while his sibling was not. And it really speaks a lot about trauma and how trauma can influence further down in your life. I felt like it was a bit too long and it kind of went off in too many different directions that it didn't feel like it had a sole story to it. But that's just my opinion. From Trinidad and Tobago, I have The Bread the Devil Need by Lisa Allen Agostini. This book follows Alethea, who is a 40-year-old woman. She works in a fashion boutique and she is in an abusive relationship. And one day she sees a woman murdered outside of her shop by her abusive partner, and it scares Alethea and causes her to reflect on her relationship and her life and kind of the traumas throughout her life. I really, really love this book. The main character's voice is so strong and compelling. She was such an interesting character to see through. I guess we'll do Europe now. Let's start with the obvious ones. For the UK, there's obviously dozens of books that I've read that I could recommend. The one I read recently and really loved is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This is such an interesting critique on the strict morals of the Victorian time period. You follow Tess, who is a younger woman, a part of a kind of poor farming family, and one day her father is told that they have a familial connection to a very well-respected family in their town, and he convinces Tess to go to them and plead family connection and to ask for kind of money and help. This proves to be devastating for Tess. Thomas Hardy's writing is just gorgeous. He writes the English countryside so beautifully, and he really makes you care for Tess, and I think it makes you question a lot of the morals that were in this time period. The other country that I've read quite a few books from is Ireland. The one I will recommend is Foster by Claire Keegan. Claire Keegan writes these gorgeous little novellas. This one follows a young girl whose mother is pregnant with her maybe 10th child, and she's overwhelmed with caring for the kids and being pregnant, so they have our main character go and stay with another couple for a while to ease the burden off of the family. And so you follow the young child with the foster parents. It's a beautiful story of finding family and connection. One that doesn't spoon feed things to you. I think you have to pay close attention to what is happening in order to understand the most of what Keegan is trying to say. For Sweden, I will recommend Beartown by Fredrik Backman. This is translated from Swedish by... Why would you put the translator on the front cover? That would only be smart. Neil Smith, translated from the Swedish by Neil Smith. I love this book. It's so good. This one follows a more like rural Swedish town, and the hockey team is one of the main kind of economic drivers for the town, very important, and people care a lot about the high school hockey team. And one day, one disastrous event threatens to tear the town apart. That is all I will say. I love this book. I think Fredrik Backman is such a great writer. He writes very sentimentally, but very beautifully. This next one I feel like I'm cheating a little bit with because the author isn't from Cyprus, but she is Turkish, and it's such a good book that I have to recommend it. So it's The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. It follows this young couple in the 70s in Cyprus. One is Greek, the other is Turkish, and it happens right before the breakout of the war between the Greeks and the Turkish people. And so this young couple meets in secret at this place called the Fig Tavern, and there's a fig tree. You read some chapters in the perspective of the fig tree, and which is so interesting and very beautiful. There's a lot of great environmental writing in this one, just about nature and the connection between plants and living creatures. This one is really, really beautiful. I really recommend. I feel like I'm calling all of these books beautiful. So for Norway, I actually have two recommendations. I'll start with The Ice Palace by Tarjei Vejas, translated from the Norwegian by Elizabeth Roken. This is like a Norwegian classic. It follows two young girls who form a friendship, and they explore this local waterfall which is frozen over, and one day one of the girls goes missing. There's a lot of really pretty descriptions of ice in this one. It's also a very sad and meditative book. The other Norwegian novel I will recommend is Mother Dead by Vigdis Hjorth, translated from the Norwegian by Charlotte Barsland. This is a more modern Norwegian book. It follows an older woman, or like a middle-aged woman, who has been estranged from her family for 30 years, and she moves back to Oslo, and she wants to rekindle her connection with her mother. And so you follow her along attempting to speak with her mother, but she gets a little unhinged. For France, I have Shame by Annie Ernaux, translated from the French by Tanya Leslie. I love this one. This is my first, or no, not my last. I can't wait to read another one by her. This one just follows Ernaud's childhood and her reflecting about how shame has kind of cropped up in a lot of different areas throughout her life, through her family's poverty, through religion, through the trauma that she has experienced, through her parents' kind of abusive relationship. So much beautiful, beautiful writing. I tabbed so much. I found so much of this profoundly relatable. From Lebanon, I have The Broken Wings by Kahil Gibran. Translated from Lebanese. I don't know if this edition will actually say who the translator is, because this is such a strange edition. There is like numerous typos and like grammar mistakes in this printing, so maybe don't purchase this edition, but definitely pick this book up because it is gorgeous. It follows this couple. She is promised to another by her father, but she obviously doesn't love him, and they're in love, and so it's an unrequited love story. It's absolutely beautiful. The writing is stunning. There's a lot of profound and sad lines, and it's actually quite a feminist tale. Gibran was very pro women choosing their own lives, which was really great considering I think this was written in the 1920s. From Austria, I of course had to do Rilke. I have Letters to a Young Poet. This is a series of 10 letters that Rilke wrote to another man who was an aspiring poet and asked Rilke for advice. They're really some of the most heartfelt letters I've ever read. Rilke talks about what drives a poet to write, what sources of inspiration he has, and how he thinks others should write, and a lot of just his appreciation for his friendship with this other man, which was quite sweet to read about. For Poland, I have Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Targozuk. Oh my goodness. These candles. This is translated from the Polish by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. I love this one. I just finished it a few weeks ago and I thought it was amazing. It is about an older woman who lives in kind of a remote village in Poland. She's quite eccentric, not well regarded in the town, and a series of murders starts occurring around her, and the town begins to be like suspicious of her. So interesting. The atmosphere was incredible, the writing of the landscape, and kind of just diving into the main character's thoughts. She's an animal rights activist, and she's very into astrology, and reading about her kind of strong beliefs on those two topics was just really interesting. For Germany, I read Perfume by Patrick Suskind, translated from the German by John E. Woods. I thought this one was okay. It follows a man who has a very strong sense of smell and is able to like catalog the entire world and smell like everything about an object. And you follow him as a kid and growing up, and him trying to understand the world through his sense of smell and learn how to create fragrances. It takes place in like the 1800s in Paris. The descriptions in this book are really well done. You feel very immersed in France. It's very disgusting, but extremely vivid. And then for Denmark, I was going to say Copenhagen. For Denmark, I have the Copenhagen trilogy by Tove Ditlevsen, translated from Danish by Tina Nully and Michael Falva Goldman. So the Copenhagen trilogy is 3 stories, 3 autobiographical stories that Dibblitzen wrote Childhood, Youth, and Dependency. They're all kind of about her experience growing up in Copenhagen and wanting to become a poet. The first two are about her like childhood, obviously through their titles. And I thought there was a lot of really great, relatable moments from them, and that she captured kind of a young girl's childhood very well. The last one is about her struggle with addiction to painkillers. And that one was just a brutally heartbreaking story. There's a few that I don't have copies for. From Belgium, I have I Who Have Never Known Men by, oh my gosh, why can't I remember her name? By Jacqueline Hartman. This is a very speculative, dystopian style book. It follows a group of 40 women who are trapped in a bunker and they don't know why they're there or how they got there. Most of them have memories from their previous lives, but our main character is a child, and so she doesn't really remember the past very well. And it's kind of an interesting exploration about humanity and how you can be human when you're not a part of society. I forgot to grab the book, but the last country is Russia. I read Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I'll have to look up which translation I read. I know that there's many, but this is the one that I read. This is a classic. I mean, I really, really loved it. It follows our main character, Anna Karenina, as she engages in an affair. There's a lot of different characters, though. It's a really interesting like capsule of Russia during that time and in its stage of modernizing, and really talks about the class differences between people, gender norms. Very interesting. Really recommend this one, which I know is like crazy to recommend like an 800-page Russian classic, but I do recommend it. I found it easier to read than I thought it was going to be. I think you just have to take it slow. Let's see. Now onto the Middle East. For Turkey, I have 10 minutes and 38 seconds in This Strange World by Elif Shafak. I know she's on this list twice, but she's so good. And this is such a great book for Turkey. It follows a woman who has just been murdered. While she's dying, she has 10 minutes and 38 seconds to like recollect her life, and so she reflects onto her childhood and how she ended up here. It's such an interesting look at a time period where there was more Islamic influence over Turkey and how that affected families and how that affected young women. This is such a political piece of work. I think that Shafak is not allowed to enter Turkey anymore because of this book. They will literally arrest her if she goes back. So extremely important novel. And then for Palestine, I have Minor Detail by Adenia Shibli. This is translated from Arabic by Elizabeth Jacket. This is a novel of two time periods. The first time period is right after World War II with the formation of Israel, and some Israeli soldiers commit a crime. And then the other time period is in like the 2010s. This woman discovers the crime and becomes kind of obsessed with it and starts to study it more in detail and wanting to find out everything she can about it. It's extremely heartbreaking, and this book has really stayed with me. I think about the ending very frequently. Then for Africa, starting with Nigeria, I have Fresh Water by Akweke Emeze. This is a really interesting book. It's about, I hesitate to say woman, named Ada, or Ada. I can't remember how to pronounce it. Essentially, she has multiple beings living within her, and they're kind of each born through different traumatic events in her life. It's a really interesting exploration of gender and gender identity and trauma. I have a few books from Ghana that I've read, but the one I recommend the most is Homegoing by Yad Gyasi. This one takes place over centuries. It starts with these two sisters who are split. One is taken across the Americas to be enslaved, and the other one stays in Ghana. And each chapter is about their subsequent children. And so you follow from like the 1800s to present day, flipping back and forth between the two familial lines. And it's such a profound, well-crafted piece of work. Those are the only two countries that I've read from Africa. I really need to find more. That would be the one that I need to research more about, more books from. If you have any recommendations, I would love to know them. Okay, and then lastly, for Asia, I have a few from Japan, but the one that I will recommend is Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, translated from the Japanese by Sam Bett and David Boyd. This follows a young boy who is bullied very severely for his lazy eye. He finds an unlikely friendship in another young girl who is also bullied. And they two kind of have this twisted and dependent friendship. It's an interesting study on why people bully, being an outsider, being lonely. She has also written Breasts and Eggs, which is a story more on women through different stages in their lives. I have this book and I really want to read it soon. The other country from Asia that I read from is Sri Lanka. I read Brotherless Night by Vivi Ganeshanathan. This book takes place also in the 70s, I believe, and it follows a young woman who wants to study to be a doctor, but at the time of her enrolling in medical school, the Sri Lankan Civil War breaks out. As she's studying to be a doctor, her brothers and close male friends are kind of pulled into this war. There's a lot of morals towards joining the war and standing by your people, and it makes for a really heartbreaking and devastating read, but it is so good. This won the Women's Prize this year, and I highly, highly recommend reading this. Just an absolutely stunning story. The main character is written so profoundly well. Oh, I actually have one more from Asia, and from Vietnam, I have Wandering Souls by Cecil Pin. This one follows a young family, a girl and her two younger brothers travel by boat to the United Kingdom in order to emigrate there during the Vietnam War, during the Vietnam War. Her parents and youngest sibling are meant to follow them on the next boat, but their boat is lost. And so you follow the three siblings growing up during Thatcher's prime ministership of the UK, and the struggles with immigrating to a new country, Thatcher's poor policies on immigration. Really well-written book. Highly recommend this one. I think that might be every country. It's probably enough anyways. Oh, nope, there's one more. Australia. I read Restless Dolly Maunder by Kate Grenville. This is a semi-nonfiction story about Grenville's grandmother who lived in rural Australia during the start of the 1900s, and she is kind of bound by her gender norms while trying to make a life for herself that she wants to live. I didn't love this one very much, but it was interesting and kind of a good, an interesting read on that particular time period and that particular place, and seeing Australia kind of built up during that turn of the century. Whew. Okay, that was so many books. that is all that I have today. I will update as I read more countries, but thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you've read any of these books and you liked or disliked them, let me know. Or if you have any recommendations for countries that are not on this list, please feel free to tell me. I'm always looking for more. I keep a list of all of the books that I want to read eventually, also on this Excel, so I really do look at all the recommendations that I get. So yeah, I wish you all the best reading ahead. Thanks. Bye.